We're live on Facebook. Recording. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Pete Caliendo here, Baseball Outside the Box. Thanks for joining us in the U.S. and around the world. We're thrilled that you can be with us. You are live on Facebook. So if you're live on Facebook checking us out, we typed it up there. If you got a question for today's guests, please type it. And there we are, up live. Type it on the Facebook comment section. Any question. Today's guest, before we start, don't forget, go to YouTube, Peter Caliendo. Subscribe. Just do us that favor. It's all we need. That's all we ask. Subscribe to the show. Help us out. It'll help get it out on YouTube. And we have 90 plus shows with coaches, players, parents, you name it, experts in the U.S. and around the world on the show. So you will love the shows. Any questions, email me at caliendo19@gmail.com. And today we're going to continue the long-term development discussion. It's going to cover all kinds of aspects of college baseball. We'll cover college recruiting also, and we'll get into travel ball showcases, all kinds of great stuff going on in the game. And today's guest, I must tell you, one of the best young baseball coaches in the country. And I call him young because I'm older than him. So he's got a ton of experience. Full disclosure, known him a long time. He's also been with me. He's been one of our coaches going Caliendo Sports International around the world. We've been to Cuba, Dominican Republic, Italy, Japan. We've been all over the world. And Coach Nelson's been one of our coaches. Also, he was one of the coaches and still works with USA Baseball with the NTIS, the National Team Identification Program. He was one of the coaches there. And by the way, shout out to Mr. Cronenworth, one of our players in the former NTIS, in the big leagues with the San Diego Padres, and was listed almost in a top 10 rookies going on right now. He's having a very good season within the first, 10 ball games. So shout out to Jake Cronenworth, man. Saw him in Japan with Team USA, got a chance to visit with him. It was a lot of fun. Hey, listen, our guest today, first of all, he is the new baseball coach at Harper Junior College. Let me tell you, this college is going to rise up to higher levels very soon because he is in charge. He's also the director of the largest collegiate recruiting network, NCSA. We're going to talk about that. And the founder of the Illinois Indians, in my opinion, one of the best travel programs in the country. And we've got a lot of good travel programs in the country. We're going to have a lot of those people who are in charge on the show. So let's get started right away. My good friend, local in Chicago and a UIC alumni, Mr. Nelson Gord. What's up, buddy?
How you doing? That's quite the intro.
Hey, sorry you had to sit there and listen to all that.
Yeah, I'm excited to be on. I'm still thrown off by the best young coaches. I think when we first started working together, that title was a little bit more applicable. But now I have guys that we coached that are coaching for us. So the game perpetuates itself, and I'm somewhere between old and young, somewhere living in between.
Hey, we're as young as we feel, right? That's the most important thing. And trust me, you'll be saying the same thing to a lot of the coaches that you have in your program when you talk to them. This is one of the young, brightest coaches I've ever met. But truly, folks, Nelson Gord, again, we'll put up all the stuff on the show notes. Not only a very good baseball coach, great family person, role model, and you'll see as we continue to talk to Nelson. So, hey, let's just do this. I love to start off with, because we haven't talked in a little while, Nelson. Talk what you've been doing through this pandemic, because, you hear there's a lot of negative stuff out there a lot of times, but I think there's a lot of positive things that can happen during a situation like this that we've never been confronted with before.
Yeah, so obviously spent a lot of time on Zoom calls, as you have, and one of the things that we did with our travel. What's that?
Some Zoom stock ahead of time.
I didn't ahead of time, unfortunately, but I know some people that were pretty heavily involved in that, and they treated me to a couple nice steak dinners.
There you go.
No, but spent a lot of time on these calls, and one of the big challenges with the travel program was recognizing that those kids lost their high school season, right? And you and I both know how important that is, and how important the high school coaches are, and on top of that, like the team dynamic, right? Because that's what's missing in travel ball is you get the 15U, the 16U, the 17U. You're always playing with your age group, so there's never really that pecking order. You don't have the freshmen or the sophomores looking up to the seniors and seeing how they're doing things. So in response to that, within our program, we created these accountability groups which had a mixture of, eighth graders on through seniors in high school. And then within those groups, we also had mentor-mentee pairs. So we'd pair up a sophomore with a senior, a freshman with a junior. And, that way those guys can develop their leadership skills, for the older guys. But then the younger guys have somebody to turn to since they're not seeing it firsthand, since they can't be in the locker room or on the field looking up to those guys because they're, we were in a lockdown at that point in time. They can text them, they can call them, they could FaceTime them, they could do whatever they need to do just to ask questions. And I think we did a really good job of that. Just like anything else, some kids embraced it more than others and really took advantage of it. Others were a little bit hesitant, but, only did the bare minimum. But at least there was that outlet. And I think that was something that I was proud of. And I think, our guys as a whole really embraced and helped out certain individuals.
I love that. I think a lot of coaches can learn from that. That still can continue because obviously, some kids are not playing. I know there's in Illinois here where we've got some teams playing already, and we'll talk about that. Two things on that I wanted to ask you about. One, it's interesting because that also, when younger kids have to talk to older kids, that also improves their ability to communicate better. That's something that young kids, I know it helped me tremendously, but I didn't get a chance to start it till I was probably 17. But when you can start it at 10, 11, 12 years old, start to your communication skills, that could help you in many ways.
Oh, it's so important. I mean, that's the thing. When I think about what we do as coaches, a lot of it has to do with skill development, teaching the game, growing the passion and the love for the game. But equally as much, you want to develop those things that are transferable, right? Because they're not going to play forever. Not every single one of them is going to stay in coaching or stay in the industry, so to speak. They're going to go on and do other things. They're going to work for major corporations. They're going to start their own businesses. They're going to have their own families. And like you said, the ability to communicate face to face on the phone, having a conversation is kind of a lost art. We had to rely on that. We had to depend on that when we were growing up because we didn't have all the social media and the text messaging and everything else. But it's an underdeveloped skill. It's one that I know employers are really hungry to find people that have those abilities, have those soft skills, because those are going to amplify all the other abilities that they have when they're able to effectively communicate it and lead people and be able to make connections in that way.
Absolutely. And I know personally, if I'm hiring somebody, I get it. If you're an IT guy, your IT skills got to be pretty good. But, if I'm hiring someone, first thing I'm looking at is how you communicate with people, your relationship with people, what kind of character do you have, all the things that you're looking for also as a good coach. And we'll get into that. The other thing I wanted to ask you is this. I've suggested this, just want to get your opinion. You guys may have done it. I've suggested coaches when we're online. It's a little pet peeve of mine. I think pet peeve, maybe call it pet peeve, but call it more something I think we need to work on more. And that is the ability for our young kids to learn the game better, learn to play the game on their own better, make decisions, understand there's failure. So I suggested, during this time, it'd be kind of cool, throw a game on TV, on Zoom. I'm not sure if you can do it legally, but maybe you can get another game. And as you're watching the game, ask questions to your players, what they would do in those situations. So they can constantly learn the game because, again, they're not playing the game. But if they're not playing, then we got to figure out ways to get them to understand it better, to think ahead, kind of like you would do as a manager, right? Think ahead. So that way, they almost know what you're going to do in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was a great time of it, or great time for it. MLB Network was replaying all the games from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And when you're watching those, that's a lot more applicable or a lot more similar to the way the high school game is going to be played, or the way the kids are playing at that age, because it's not strikeout, walk, strikeout, 3-run homer. There were balls put in play, there were moving runners over, there were a whole variety of things that you don't see as much in the major league game today, but that the kids really could learn from. And we're quick to jump them and say, hey, how do these kids have such low baseball IQ? They're lacking baseball acumen, and we throw around all these buzzwords. But what do you expect from them when they turn on the TV and all they see are, guys throwing 100 miles an hour and guys, I know it's a buzz term again, or a polarizing one, but launching balls, right? We say, hey, that ball got launched, now it's launch angle. But that's a whole different discussion. But when that's all they see and that's all they learn and grow up around, well, obviously that's what they're going to emulate. So I think watching some of those older games was really a great opportunity for some of them to have those conversations, and something that I think, yeah, we definitely could implement moving forward and analyzing it in that way.
Hey, great point. And I'm glad you brought that up. And folks, we're going to obviously get into other things, but we're going to stay with this because it kind of relates to it. You brought up the good point about today's game. Something I hear, and again, you're out more than I am out there. You're nationally. You go all over nationally with all these showcases, tournaments.
Not right now.
Not now, but
yeah.
Past and
Right.
up till the pandemic. But you
Right.
stay in communication with a lot of these. And I've seen some of these showcases are online now. I've seen some on Facebook. My question would be this, the game's changed at the major league level. You just mentioned it. Now, hopefully with some of the things that are going on currently, we'll start learning that, some teams maybe will change some of the things they're doing. But my question is, you're not seeing bunny, you're not seeing stealing, you're not seeing a lot of things happening in the game at the higher levels. But you're also hearing some of the younger levels saying that we're not going to do that either because they're not going to use it later on. I want to get your opinion on that because I'm kind of broken up on that, man. It's like, wait a second, just because they're not going to do the big leagues, these kids aren't always going to be big league players. What about today and now and today's game? Isn't the goal to try to, you have a team, it is to try to win that game. Otherwise, why even play it? But so what's your thought on that?
There's a disconnect somewhere because, you talk to college coaches, I do, you talk to high school coaches, I do. And in both of those instances, one of their big hangups, one of their big frustrations is kids not, developing those skills, not knowing how to handle the bat, not knowing how to move guys, not knowing, where to be on the field. But then on the opposite end, from a training perspective, we're launch angle, exit velocity, throwing velocity, all those different things. And I think what has to be recognized is, develop both, right? The best players, the guys that are going to make it, and whatever make it means a million different things to a million different people, right? For some, it's the big leagues. For other guys, it's just playing any level of college baseball. For some, it's, making their high school team, right? So that's different to everyone. But, if you can continue to develop the skills, but also train yourself in the game and learn the game, you're going to stick around, right? And you may not be the high profile player, but those are the 1% of the 1%. And, what's interesting is when you look at it now, and it really hasn't changed, it's just a lot easier to identify. When you're looking at the way guys hit and the way guys pitch, velocity is a lot easier to handle because everybody out there, when you go to a high level travel tournament, all those guys are throwing 82 to 86 miles an hour. And, back in the day, that'd be pretty hard, right? For any level of high school baseball, you get some guys touching 90 occasionally. But anything in the mid 80s as a high school player was hard. Now everybody's doing it. But those guys get hit, right? And if you have a pitcher that is able to back off and live below the hitting speed and above the hitting speed and kind of, teeter-totter off of that, you're going to get outs, right? And I think that's the whole game is, okay, do you want to look good on paper or do you want to help your team win ball games? And if you want to help your team win, then you got to, 1, prevent runs, and 2, score runs and figure out ways to do that. So it's just having a healthy balance. And I don't think either side is right or wrong. I think the best embrace both and continue to grow and develop in that.
Yeah, I could tell you this. Personally, when I played, and I know we don't want to go back to our times, but if I couldn't bunt, if I couldn't, play defense, play many positions, kind of be an all-around player. Me personally, that doesn't mean every player has to do that. But me personally, I would have never played college baseball. Wouldn't even come close. So that was the way for me to get to play college baseball. Because if I was a one-position player, I wouldn't have made it. So I think you hit something there. We're trying to teach individuals, train individuals. And maybe you've got a kid that's a home run hitter. at a young age, but at times you may need him to bunt. I mean, he's only 11 years old. We're not talking about, somebody in the big leagues. So why not teach everybody those skills? You never know when you're going to need them.
I mean, how many kids have you seen that were 5'8" when they're 11, and then they're 5'8" when they're 18,
Yeah.
right? And the fences keep moving back, but you're not getting any bigger. So you better learn to play the game. And on the opposite end too, you look at some of the younger guys, and I love that little scrappy second baseman that's out there, and he's just undersized right now, but when his body catches up, he's going to be a pretty darn good ball player, because by default they have to learn how to compete and develop all those other things. And then suddenly that kid that was 4'8", he's 6'3". I mean, I know not everybody's 6'3", but he grows and gets to that point, and it's scary. It's scary what those kids are able to do. And there's countless examples of that, of guys that are in the big leagues now that were undersized growing up, and suddenly they sprouted, and look out, they're all-stars now.
Since we're on this kind of approach of travel baseball, I think travel baseball is important to discuss simply because it's so big, it's large. Obviously, it's a big business. And folks, I've said it on the show before, I think baseball business is fantastic as long as you're doing the right job. I always criticize people when they say, or when they say to me, "Oh, you make money in baseball?" My response is, "Well, what do you do for a living?" "Oh, I'm a dentist." "Oh, I don't have to pay you to be, I guess when
you make money in teeth."
Yeah, exactly. You're going to do it for free. So, but my big belief is, just like us, we take teams around the world, but what kind of service are we giving? That's the key. Like, and in any business, what's the service you're giving? And travel ball can't take its criticism like any other level, but it's also done some great stuff. Now, you started 13 years ago with the Indians. It'd be great to get your outlook and what, back then when you started and where it's at now, and some of the positives of what travel baseball has done to help develop the game, develop players, and what it's done. And then we'll get into some other things.
Yeah, well, I mean, when we first started, we were only 11, 12, and 13 years old. It was born out of a fall league that we did. Some parents and some families were hungry for a little bit more, and that's what we created initially. As those kids grew over the next couple of years, I quickly realized that I love working with the high school kids. I love doing the recruiting end of things. A lot of that was a byproduct of working with you and some of the USA baseball stuff, and getting a chance to work with some of those guys. But I think the real benefit of it is you create organized instruction and accountability and everything else outside of the high school setting, because that's the downside of high school ball, is that you're limited in the amount of interaction that you can have with the kids, right? I mean, we should bring Coach Ayers on here right now so we can get him going. But it's impossible to believe that you want kids to feel really good about something when you can only practice with them for 12 days before the season starts, and they're supposed to hit the ground running, right? That's just not fair to them. So, there was a lot of the individual and the private instruction and the camp stuff going on. And then, at some point, a lot of people were just like, well, if we can provide all this instruction, but do it alongside with the team, we have the best of both worlds. And I don't think the intention was ever to really compete with the high schools, or, to make guys choose which one's better or worse. I think most of the people that got into it, and most of the ones that are still around it, have really good intentions. They love the game. You said about people saying, "Hey, you make money on baseball." I think we both would agree we don't make a whole heck of a lot of money. That's why you read out the whole intro that had all the different titles, because you got to piece things together to pay your bills. But I think that's it. It's just you want kids to care about something, and if they're going to be invested in training and working harder, you want them to reap the benefits and then being able to see that on the field. And I think that's really the whole idea of my concept of travel baseball. And I think what others are doing when they have academies and they have, the facilities to train at. Like, hey, train. We get you ready for high school, come back in the summer, and we see how all of this stuff came together and how you're a better player now on the field. Because that's hard, doing private lessons and then sending them off and not being able to see them or interact with them in a game setting. I've done that in the past, and that's a difficult task because they got to report back to you on how they did rather than you seeing it with your own eyes.
You know, and you started 13 years ago. What do you see as, what did you do, you know, throughout the years as a business? You're always trying to improve, obviously, you know, and then you get feedback from parents, coaches, and players and so forth. What are some of the things that the Indians kind of changed along the way to improve, to make the programs even better?
Well, we don't do youth teams anymore. So there's one 14-year-old team now, but everything else is high school aged. And the reason for that is I believe, you know, firmly they should be playing in their communities, right? They should be in their town, wherever they grew up in, at the local park. So people can come out and watch, and, you know, you're not driving all over the darn place. I do, you know, believe in that side of it. And then also, and I think it kind of goes along with it, not always chasing the next best thing. When we were doing the young guys, especially, they did, oh, you got to see this 12-year-old, you got to see this 13-year-old. You go out and watch, and you're like, oh, that wasn't hard to pick out. It's the biggest kid on the field who's just pounding the ball. You know, come back to me in 3-4 years. Let's see how he is then. And, you know, so we've been pretty conservative about the kids that, you know, we bring into the program. We don't really, we don't oversell what our, you know, what our performance is going to be, because we're at the discretion of the tournaments and who we're pooled up against and everything else. But what we do double down on is the fact that, one, you're going to get better. Like, we can assure you of that. Like, you will be a better player a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now than you were when you started. And then secondly, and this is probably a good segue into the college stuff, like, there's a college program out there for you. Right. And I've had players that, you know, were at the bottom third of our rosters that, you know, played in college, right? That found a best fit for them, found a place for them that in a lot of cases I never even heard of, or I didn't know that college coach or that program. But because of the tools that we gave them and because of the people that we surrounded them with, they were able to do their homework. They were able to piece things together. And then we just supplemented that and, you know, help them along in their dream.
You know, since you brought up the college aspect, like to jump into that, and we could always bounce back in the travel ball too. You know, as the baseball director for NCSA, again, the largest college recruiting service, you know, I agree with you because, again, I'm just using myself as an example. I found the college to play, and it took some hard work, but you know, I found it. There is a place, and if I could find it, I know a lot of other players that with a lot better skills can definitely find it. So as a large recruiting service at the top, obviously you guys have placed a lot of players out there, but you're also going to take some criticism because you're going to take same criticism as I might with international travel. Well, that's a lot of money. You know, is it really worth, you know, why can't the coaches just find me? Is it really worth paying a service to do that?
Well, I mean, let's make one thing clear. There are so many free tools and resources within the NCSA profiles and on the website that people could benefit greatly just from utilizing that. So it's not a all or nothing. It's not black or white, like you pay for it or you don't get anything. I think that's one of my biggest frustrations is that, you know, you're handing somebody something and you're like, hey, like, just play around with this. And the ones that do play around with it and start entering their stuff in and start following the different prompts and the different, you know, exercises that are in there, they want more, right? They want more. And the ones that criticize it are oftentimes the ones that have never touched it, have never worked inside there, have never taken a look at it. And that's a difficult thing, right? That's a difficult thing for anybody. It's like, you know, you don't even know what you're criticizing. And I think what people, and whether it is international trips or travel baseball, whatever, they're criticizing, and this is actually kind of ironic because we're both sitting in our basements right now. But they're criticizing the single individual.
Hey, speak for yourself. I'm in my studio.
Your studio. It's a multi-purpose living space. That's how Bev would list it on the MLS, right?
That's right.
But they're criticizing the one-man show that's charging a lot of money and not doing anything, and they don't recognize that when it comes to NCSA, we have 800 people in the company. We work with hundreds of thousands of athletes every year. The technology is world class, and if you're looking for a job or looking to hire people, you go on LinkedIn. If you're marketing your business or want to connect with people, you go on Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, whatever. If you want to play a college sport and find the right fit for you, that's what NCSA is. It's not one person taking your money. It's a platform that also has a service aspect. But it's a resource for anybody to use, coaches, athletes, everybody in between.
And you guys have a huge advantage, obviously being the largest in the world, and you've been around a while. You've built rapport with coaches out there. So when your information goes to that coach, it's, they see NCSA and they're more apt to respond that if the dad is sending a video and an email to the college coach, obviously, I mean, that's why I look at it. They're more apt to respond from that standpoint.
Yeah. And the phrase that we always say is like third party verified. And there's a lot of the showcase company. I mean, that's essentially what they're doing, right? They're verifying the numbers. They're doing stuff like that. We're all of those things. But I think the thing that really separates us is the educational aspect and the fact that, when we do have members that we work with, there's, ACT and SAT tutoring, there's financial aid advisement, there's, personality and skill finder tests, there's webinar, Zoom call classes that they could do that's instructing them on how to communicate with college coaches. There's all sorts of things that are built within there that go beyond just putting together a website. And I think that's really the power. I wouldn't say that coaches are more or less likely to open anything or to respond to anything. I do believe that, the ones that are deep into the network they're putting themselves out there in a little cleaner fashion, and it's a little bit more respected and not taken with the same hesitation that, if dad was filming something, he's like, oh, my radar gun just said 92. Right. That's not what's happening. It's, we have on the college coach end, there's a little green verified stamp for anything that is actual. And if it's lacking that stamp of approval, then the college coaches know this is either self-reported or we couldn't confirm it with the family or the coach or something. So, we try to delineate those things and package it in a way that makes it easy for coaches to digest the information without, having to do too much hard work.
Love it. And I love the part about the education, all the educational aspects behind the program. If I had that when I was younger, boy, it would have helped me tremendously because I had no clue. ACT, SAT, no idea about how to
ABC 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, and no idea how to pick a college, I mean, who to look for, no clue at all. I think that would have helped me a great deal. Nelson, let's jump back to the travel ball for a second. I'm going to address a couple issues there. One, if you had advice for anybody starting a travel program now, what would be some of that advice you'd give them?
Start small and be hands-on, right? You're doing it. If you're doing it because you want to build this massive program and, you want the coolest uniforms and the nicest facility and, you want to be a millionaire, then it's inevitably going to fail. If you're doing it because you're passionate about the kids, you're not afraid to get dirty and work long hours and, develop those sort of relationships, then do it that way. And, I would recommend, to any guys out there that are interested, if you have a couple kids in your area that you're working with and they want to play on the same team together and you want to coach them, put it out there, right? And create your own vision on a smaller scale and then figure out what you're not good at. We were talking yesterday, there are a few guys that that we've worked with in the past, like Trevor Stocking and Matt Mayhay and Corey Lipinski, and we were standing in a circle and actually talking a lot more about our mistakes over the years than we were about the successes. And like, man, like what the heck were we thinking? And just because you don't know what you don't know. And I think Matt made the point yesterday. He's like, hey, whenever we try to start getting too creative and we try to get creative to help people out, to create a new team for them or to, bring them to this event. He's like, it ends up blowing up in our face, right? Because you're trying to do everything for everybody. So start small, make it scalable, surround yourself with good people, and just care, be passionate, right? And I think that carries over to anything. Like, forget just starting a travel baseball club. Anything that you do, if you're not passionate about it, you don't have the heart for it, then it's probably not going to work over a long period of time.
It's funny, some of those similar words I've heard Warren Buffett, I've heard some of the top billionaires in the world talk about the same way. They never thought they'd be billionaires. They were passionate about something. They focused on one thing. They stayed with it. They did the best they could. They treated people good, and eventually they ended up making a lot more money than they thought they would. So yeah, I'm with you there, man. If you're a commissioner now in the U.S., we don't have a standardized program. We have leagues of travel teams. We have leagues of in-house. We have different leagues, where it might be pony, little league. So really there is no standardized system. Everybody's kind of on their own within their own organizations. If we had a travel system that was all one system and you were commissioner of that travel ball system, the whole country, what would be some of the changes that you would make, or maybe some of the things you would just keep?
There'd be league play, right? We'd play leagues, we would play tournaments. We'd fix some of the rates around, and I know this is up to the facilities, but around field rentals and, umpire prices and everything else, and make it more of an association where, you have access to certain things at certain rates. And I would track everything. And what I mean by that is, innings pitched, pitches thrown, even statistics. Right, even statistics. And I was talking to another good friend of ours, to CJ, to Curtis Granderson, and he was telling me that he was out working with some kids at his high school at TF South, and pretty good player, plays for one of the local travel programs, and kids talking about going to a Big Ten school or Missouri Valley, all these big schools, and CJ's like, what are you hitting this summer? And is like, I don't know. Like, and one kid's like, oh, he's hitting like 260. He's like, man, 260. He's like, back when we were in high school, if you were hitting 260, you were hitting in the 9-hole. You weren't talking about going to a Big Ten school. He's like, that's nonsense. And I think that's it. And this goes back to our original conversation about, just the training versus the coaching. Kids can throw hard and they can have huge exit velocities, but if they don't know how to play the game, they're going to fail at that next level. And if you designed a system where you were tracking statistics and you were reporting those, I remember back in high school opening up a Daily Herald, to see who the leading hitters in the area were. And you look forward to that. If you're like, oh, they didn't get my last game where I went 3 for 4, I'd be ahead of this guy, right? I'd be ahead of TJ Null. But that's what you wanted, and I think it gives them something to play for, other than just trying to get to Sunday and then playing 4 or 5 games on a Sunday for a meaningless trophy, for one of 20 different national championships that are going on every weekend. It's just too much. It's too much that doesn't equate to a lot in the end.
How about coaches' education? What do you see out there when it comes to travel ball? I know that, obviously, I know some of the guys they do a fantastic job. We've got a lot of good coaches or people who run travel programs that are concerned with the education of the coach, the quality of the coaches, the professionalism of the coach, the role model of that coach, all the things that are important, because if you've got 10 teams, you probably have 20 coaches, 2 on a team at least. Keeping the consistency and the education behind it. And sometimes I say professionalism because, you see some things on Facebook, Twitter once in a while, and it can happen at any level, but, coaches stepping outside the line a little bit, and that's not a good example for young kids. What's your overall view on that?
Well, it's something that you and I have talked about for a long time. I know something that you've been a big proponent of, something that you've done internationally, and the big challenge has been here in the States, right? That's been the uphill battle, and it's because no matter how many different training programs are laid out or coach certification programs that are laid out, if they don't do it, what's the repercussions of it, right? They're just going to go start and play somewhere else and do something else. So I think that's a big challenge. I will give a lot of credit to USA Baseball over the past, 2-3 years. I think I think it hasn't even been 2 full years now yet. I think it launched at ABCA in 2019. But they have the USA Baseball Sport Dev and their coach certification, and that was one thing. I wouldn't say it's 100% perfect. Nothing is, but there's enough content. It's free. There's a background check aspect to it. There's courses around safety. There's the pure baseball part, because every sport, after a lot of the stuff that's went on over the past several years, is subject to all the safe sport laws. So those are important things when you're working with children. So that's one thing this year that we required all of our coaches in the Illinois Travel Baseball Club to go through. And it not only did it, it adds credibility, because you can go back to the parents and be like, listen, our coaches have completed these courses, and a lot of it is stuff that, many of us already know, but it is a good refresher, and it also opens up a lot of conversation. So, I think it is something that ideally would be a requirement, across all levels and across all states. But unfortunately, because of the business aspect of it and some other, major players involved, it's an uphill battle, right? So I think that's kind of the long and short of it.
Yeah, and I think
it needs to be done.
I think you hit a good point there, and simply because, like we said, we know a lot of very good travel baseball coaches, travel programs, and all those programs. Every time I see the coach on Twitter or wherever he is, he's always trying to challenge something new, something better, trying to figure out how to do it better. So they're always trying to learn, and that's all you can ask. Constantly learn, apply it, help your kids out. And you see the good ones doing that. And I'm hoping that, that continues through travel ball. Sometimes my concern is if you have moms and dads who are well-intended volunteers, they mean well, but sometimes they get a little bit too emotional, especially during game time. Maybe don't know the rules, don't understand the teaching aspect. We ask, it's interesting. We ask our you got young kids, they go to school. Well, the teacher, has to be certified, has to go through some kind of program. Yet we could send our kids at 10 years old to a travel program, and that person doesn't have to be certified at all. And the response might be, well, he's only with them or she's only with them a certain time. Nowadays, you're with them almost all year round, because you're indoor travel training, you're, throughout the season. So I just think, I believe it's important. What other areas, advice, I guess I should say, anything else when it comes to travel baseball? Because, I look at it this way. Everybody looks at college and high school or pro baseball as the top levels. Great. I look at the youth levels being the top levels, because without having the right people at those levels, in-house, travel ball, even high school, if you don't have the right people there doing the right things, kids are going to drop out. Look, I want to give USA Baseball a lot of credit for what they've done, because it's not been easy for them, to try to educate coaches all over the U.S., and they've done a great job. And I recommend, obviously, highly that you go to the website, usabaseball.com. But it seems like, it's not easy to concentrate on the younger levels, because, it's not glorified. You're not out there in the public. But we need really the young levels to really pick up, because we're seeing an increase in participation in the game, but we're also seeing a decrease at a certain age group, like 13, of dropping out. Now, I know people are going to say, well, those are videos and other things. But the facts are, and that's why I call this long-term development when it comes to baseball. If you're developing players for the long term, and what do I mean by that? Maybe reducing number of games for young kids and practicing more. Doing certain things that long term, they'll be more successful. It'll be more fun for them, and they'll stay in the game longer. If we do those things, I think that's better for the game at the younger level. So I guess with all my talking, my question is, at the young levels, what else do we need to do? Is that one of them? Because I see we play way too many games. When I see an elite team, 8-year-olds being called elite and playing 80 games, I think that's crazy, because if you look at the best countries in the world, they practice more than they play.
So it's a long question. I'm going to answer it very simply.
Well, it was a question with a lot of comments.
A lot of content to it. Here's how you gauge that. Do your kids want to come back and do it again tomorrow? Right. And I think that's it's been a really interesting time for everyone. And it's been awesome, for me, because I've had the chance to coach my son in t-ball. Lacey is playing softball for the first time in a couple years because the dance stuff was kind of down. And at the same time, I get announced as a head college coach. So talk about running the full spectrum of things. And what I've learned is you got to meet them where they're at, right? You got to understand their language. You got to, when I'm dealing with 5 and 6 year old kids, I got to talk about like Disney movies and Minecraft on their iPad or Roblox or something. So I have to learn from my son, and then I have to understand that so I can relate to the other kids and get them to stay involved in the game. Another thing that I'm doing with them, and it's probably the most rewarding thing in this t-ball season, is I have a big bin of old baseball cards, all from the 1980s. And we're going through, me and all 3 of the kids, and we're sorting them by different teams. And they're confused, like, who the heck are the Expos? And had to explain that. But every time we play against another team, we'll take the stack of cards. Like we played the Cardinals 2 nights ago. We took the stack of Cardinals cards, and every kid on our team handed 3 or 4 cards to the kids from the other team. And they were, you would think it was the best thing in the world. They were head over heels excited about it. And, that's growing the game, right? That's keeping them involved, keeping them interested. It's something different. It's why it's part of the reason I want to play. Like I look forward to playing a ball game and then going to White Hen, with my dad and getting a slushy drink and a pack of ball cards like that. That's fun. Those are great memories, right? And if we're able to grow it that way, like that's a good thing. And same thing with the girls, trying to relate to 11 and 12-year-old girls on a softball field, and talking to them about taking selfies or doing TikTok videos and stuff like that. Like that's the language they speak. Okay, so how can I use their language and process this information to them so they get it, so they're able to execute on things and then feel good about themselves and want to come back the next day. And I think with every level, like that's just it. Like coaches get sometimes too hung up on the technicalities or the X's and O's or, all the lingo and everything. No, like meet them where they're at, give them information they can understand, and, don't try to be a know-it-all. Try to be someone that they can relate to. And I think the great coaches at any level, have always been able to do that. And I feel like this time away from the game has made me a better coach because it's sharpened the tools in my toolkit and, made me be able to relate to a lot more individuals more efficiently.
I love that. That's another sign I'm going to have to make. I got all kinds of signs. Meet them where they're at. I think that's awesome. I think that's perfectly said. The other aspect of travel ball or any really teams or organizations, and be interesting to get your take on this, and that is having kids at certain teams. Nowadays it seems like, we're rewarding kids for even not doing well. And how they're going to learn that, what kind of incentives you use. What do you do with your program in order so kids understand that you've got to earn certain things? Yes, we want to praise them when they do well, but they got to understand if they're not doing so well, why? And if they're going to go to the next level, look, I get it. The next year they're going to go to the next team. I understand all that. But what happens, in travel ball, it seems like kids got to play because they're paying. There's that balance there. No different if they go overseas with us, they're going to play fairly. But ours is a little bit different situation because it's not all year round. How do you treat that? How do you work with that with your parents and players? That's a delicate issue.
Yeah, and to be totally transparent, it's something that I don't think there is a perfect answer to. It's something that we continue to struggle with. We had a few instances this summer, nothing horrible. Okay, but I think it all goes back to just setting expectations, right? And I think if you go into a season and you're like, hey, we want to develop these kids, we want them to get their reps, and we want them to do this, and we're not concerned about what the stats are or anything else, and then you bench kid because he's not performing, you're going to open up a whole storm. And we had one instance of that I can think of. On the opposite end, it's also knowing what the parents' expectations are, right? Because you could set your own expectations, but if they don't align with what they want, then it's best to just not even involve them in the first place, right? Because there are some families, there are some kids that, if they're not winning every ball game, if they're not in the championship game every weekend, then it's just not going to be good enough. And that's fine. Like, that happens at the 11, 12, 13 years old. But in the high school travel circuit, yeah, it's just not realistic, and it's not even the point, right? And I think that goes back to why I said before about having league play, over a 30, 40 game league schedule, or a 30, 40 game high school schedule in the spring. The wins and losses are going to balance out, and the better teams are going to have better records and everything else. But when it's isolated to 5 or 6 games in one weekend, like, anything could happen, right? Anything could happen. You get one kid that's sick, you get one kid that's arm sore, we're not going to overthrow our guys. The other team's going to throw some kid for 150 pitch. Like, you just don't know. So it's not a really good representation of what that team's capable of. And it creates a lot of headaches, right? So I think understanding their expectations, you as a program setting clear expectations, making sure those meet, that alleviates a lot of problems that you could have. But they're still going to come up, and just communication is going to be the key.
And that's what you talked about earlier, because it sounded like you mentioned that you're going to basically interview or understand that family and the parents, talk about the expectations before you even bring them into the program. Because even though they're going to pay to come to the program, it may not be worth having them with you. They don't agree with your expectations.
Oh, there's plenty of them out there like that. And, sometimes, whether it's coach or a program director or whomever, they put blinders on because the kid might be pretty talented, but it will tear apart teams. It will tear apart programs. The same way, and it's not just all in the families of the players, same way a bad coach can, right? We've had our run-ins with guys that, are sharp baseball people and care a lot about the game, but all the things that we just talked about, their ability to relate to people, their ability to make kids want to come back, to, just love the game. You have to love the game, you have to have fun playing the game. And when you suck the fun out of the game, they're not going to want to come back, and it shouldn't be all work, right? I mean, we forget that sometimes. They're just kids. Like let them have fun, let them be with their friends, and I promise you they will perform better if they're enjoying themselves rather than you beating down on them all the time, because they didn't swing at a 2-0 pitch. Like, that's probably one thing about coaches that drives me more crazy than anything. When they come down on kids for something that that they've done plenty of times and that you see in the big leagues all the time, but they have these expectations of a 15-year-old, like they're supposed to be infallible. Just not the right way to handle things.
Yeah, some things still continue traditional-wise once in a while. I was at a park not too long ago. You hear parents or somebody yelling, throw strikes, or they're yelling, why'd you swing at that pitch, because it was a little higher, and really not understanding the coaching aspect of it. Here's the other issue, and I think it's a fine line here. I'd like to discuss this part. The number of players you carry on a roster is always debated, because one, you need more pitching, especially in events, you got tournaments on the weekend, and if you're looking at pitch counts and all that. But at the same time, you've got a business to run, so you've got to balance there, and playing time, because if you carry an 18 and 19, you may not have as much playing time. So you're looking at mostly, it seems like most travel programs carry somewhere between 12 to 13, 14 players. How do you balance that?
So I think there's, it's interesting. We have looked at it a lot. I think 2 things are pretty consistent with age. The number of players carrying a team, and also the number of hours that you probably should be training a week. And yeah, when you're 12, 13, 14, you're probably going to have 12, 13, 14 kids on the roster. Those kids are pretty committed. They're going to be there all the time. 14 might be a little bit heavy. Might be a kid too many. But you also at 14 years old have grade school graduations and, confirmations and all those other things that come along with that. When you get into high school, we kind of follow that same format. At 15 years old, 15 players all the way up to 18. We might have 18 guys, but that's going to be dependent on how many of those guys just pitch, how many of those guys have other commitments. Because when you get to 17, when you get that 17-year-old, 18-year-old level, they have college visits and, again, graduation. So they might be missing weekends. So that's a rule of thumb that we followed over time. There's some deviation to it, but it seems to work out pretty well. And if all 18 show up on a given day, might be a lot, but throughout a tournament with all the pitching that you're going to need, arm health and safety, the risk of injury, kids having jobs, right? Like working part-time to help out the family. Taking all those things into account, we found that to be a pretty good number to work with.
Now, most travel programs, they have tryouts, I believe, and then they, so they get to see the players, and then they also know the players, a lot of them. They know of them and have seen them maybe before they're recruiting. What happens if you have a player kind of slips in there and he's pretty good and he dominates at that 14-year-old level? What do you do with that kid? You keep him there? You talk to the parents? Do you move him up? How's that situation? Sometimes the parents might not want him moved up, or maybe they do. Have you had that situation come up at all?
So, we tried this year to essentially play everybody up. So our 15-year-olds, we tried to play in some 16U events. In some cases, we had a combination of 15, 16U players. Our 17-year-olds, same deal. We had a combination of 16, 17U players. The 18-year-old guys, we played in a college wood bat league, in Lenny's Metro. And we do that because we understand we might take our lumps, but our goal, again, is not to win a bunch of trophies. We want to prepare them for whatever's next. If they're coming into high school, prepare them for varsity ball. If they're, in varsity ball, prepare them for college baseball. And so we're always trying to do that. And also when it comes to the tryouts and understanding the player, it's crazy, and it's not just us, but all programs are doing tryouts now, for next year.
Mm-hmm.
And the questions that we always get is, okay, well, you got all these 15-year-olds trying out, which team's going to be on? I'm like, if I could tell you that right now, I'd be lying to you, right? Because you're 15 years old, like how physical you are, your size, your strength, you're going to be a totally different person, a totally different player, 8 months from now and 12 months from now than you are right here today. So I'm not going to say, hey, this kid's on our top team and this kid's on this team and this kid's on that team. Let's see how the fall goes. Let's see how winter training goes. Let's see how your high school season goes. And after all of that and getting all that information, now we can figure out what the best collection of kids to put on a team is. Not promise you something now and renege on it later, or say something now and, say, hey, we swung and missed on that one. Like, hey, we're going to wait to see how hungry they are, how they develop, and then we're going to put them in the right place to be able to compete and to challenge themselves.
That's a great point. I love that. The other aspect, I might be outdating myself because they may not do this anymore, but a lot of travel programs, so I've seen sometimes where they have, the main travel 16-year-old, and then they've got a second 16-year-old travel team. Maybe the player's not yet ready, prepared for the next level, and which is good because the fact, hey, you got to get better. That means you got to work at it. But then biologically, sometimes they're not at that level either. No fault to them. Have you had that situation? Do you recommend having a second team like that if possible?
Yeah, I mean, we have multiple teams at every level, and again, it goes back to the idea of there's a spot for everyone in college, right? And the bottom part of our second team at some age levels, there's kids there that might end up being Division I players, right? The snapshot of where they're at this current time is not what they're going to be in the future. And I could take, and I know this dates it a little bit, but I always look back to our 2014 grad class. we had 3 or 4 all-state shortstops in that group. Okay, just a dynamite group. And the best all-around player that was part of it ended up at Concordia. Went to the Division III World Series. Brian Van Duzer, just an unbelievable player, right? And played shortstop and played some third and stuff over there. Tommy Norton, who's at UIC now for another year, he played short for us pretty much all the time, but he's been their third baseman over there, right? So a lot of those kids develop differently, and Tommy was on our second or third team at 16 years old. And then at 17 and 18 was a mainstay at shortstop. And there's another kid by the name of Ryan Half, who just graduated from University of Illinois and played ball there. Same deal. He was playing second base on our second or third team, and ends up playing Big Ten baseball. So I think to close the door on a kid because he's not there quite yet, isn't going to do him any good. Just be straight up and be like, hey, we're going to put you on this team because you're going to get all the reps at the position that you need to get the reps at. We could put you on the other team, because you want to be on the top team, and you're going to split time in left field because that's where you're at right now. Okay. Or, you continue to develop and all those other things take place. Good things will happen over time. So I think providing opportunity, at all the age levels and, creating a place for them to get better is equally as important as putting a top team together and playing them in national type events.
That is great stuff. And that's why I love it, because I think coaches that understand this really will bring their program to another level. Nelson, as we get closer to closing, obviously as a college coach, Harper Community College, I got a couple questions on that. But before, because this one will relate to it, when you're talking about travel teams and tryouts, you also have tryouts, I believe, at the collegiate level. What's some advice to our players and parents out there when I always think it's good. I remember with the NTIS, I always thought it was good. At least give it a shot. Go to some tryouts, go to some showcases because of the pressure behind it, because of, you're taking ground balls, everybody's looking at you, and you got to learn how to deal with that because you're the only one possibly taking that ground ball and you're being evaluated. What's some advice for young people out there when they're going to a tryout, how to prepare for that mentally or physically?
Well, just like anything else, you got to run yourself through it, right? So the first time that you do a tryout or a showcase shouldn't be the first time you do a tryout or showcase. Right now when a lot of things are shut down, go out to the local field, have somebody hit you the traditional 5 to 7 ground balls, at you, your backhand, your forehand, come get it. Work on your pop times, put yourself in a cage setting to see what ball flight's going to look like, and keep doing it over and over and over again. Like train for the test, train for the showcase. And I think that's the important thing is that, everybody wants to know, okay, which one should I go to? Not, okay, let me circle this one on the calendar and prepare for it like it's the only shot that I have. And, the difficult thing is that a lot of them cost a substantial amount of money. And there's a lot of really, really good ones out there. But my advice to a lot of families is, pick out 1 or 2 a year, maybe one in the winter, one in the summer or the fall, and make that like your goal setting point, right? So I'm 14 years old and I'm going to attend this thing, not because I think I'm going to get a college offer, but I want to know where I stand against these guys. And right now I throw 68 miles an hour and I run a, 8.260, I don't know. And next year when I come back, I want to throw this hard and I want to run this fast. And then the following year I want to run and do that year over year over year. And suddenly you're at the top of the heap and you can look back and say, okay, well, here's how I got here. It just, the problem that a lot of people have is they just jump at the next thing. They get an email, they reply to it, they sign up to it. They don't know what they're getting themselves into, rather than being a little bit more strategic and laying out what that development timeline is going to be. They'll wait, they'll do none. And then they hit 17 years old and they'll do like 12 of them in 4 months. And you're like, what good's that going to do you? The throwing 81 here and throwing 80 miles an hour there doesn't make a difference. It's all recorded. So space it out, use it to sickles.
Yeah, and that's why I remember even with the NTIS, with USA Baseball's regional programs, we always said, at least give it a shot one time. You're 11 years old, give it a shot, if you could afford it, obviously. Give it a shot, because that's the time to really understand it, not when you're 17. The other part is when you go to tryouts, you've been to them, you've run them. Sometimes you have a lot of players. Now, obviously, the most obvious is, you got to be able to throw strikes, throw hard at times as a pitcher, location and all that. As a hitter, you got to be able to do certain things. But really, that's what they're trying to do. But what else stands out? Because if I'm going to stand out at a tryout and you're the coach, what else are you looking for possibly that would stand out, that I'm interested in that player for some reason?
What are some things that you'd be interested in a player?
Yeah, I mean, I could, it's easy to look at the guy that's just got 4 hits. I might like him, or the kid that just struck out 3 guys, but that's the skill aspect of it. What else are you looking for that stands out that kids may not be doing at certain times that could turn you off also?
Yeah, and I think this is something that's said a lot, but I think there's a difference in the way that it's done. How they treat their teammates, the hustle on and off the field, the hustle between bases, backing up bags, right? Like, you played second base. There's never a time at any point when you're playing second that you're just standing there, right? You're going either direction. You're going to back up first. You're going to turn double play. You're going to, back up a feed somewhere. Watching those little things are important. Talking to adults, the way they interact with their parents, the way they interact with their coaches. And I think what's interesting is that a lot of kids have been trained on this, and you can kind of quickly sniff out the ones that are doing it just to do it, and the ones that that's just a solid dude. That's just a great kid. Not the ones that are Eddie Haskelling you and, trying, oh, hi, Mr. Caliendo. And that's all good and great, man. But just be real. The ones that have that natural kind of charisma, and it comes off clean and comes off they're just being themselves, and they know that being themselves is good enough. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. You got the young kids also that don't know any better, that maybe somebody taught them. They ask a lot of questions, too many questions sometimes, or come up to you, how did I do? Or, whatever, trying to oversell themselves too much to you, or stand out too much just by talking to you also.
Yeah. You see both, and it's a trait that needs to be developed as well, right? It isn't natural for everyone, and but it is definitely forced for some, and that's kind of a little bit of a turn off, because that can go either way pretty quickly. But I think that the teammate part is a big thing, and the parent part is a big thing, because if you see them jawing back and forth with their mom and dad over something, it's just that there's a lot of baggage there. You're going to get into something later on down the line. And same thing with the teammates. You need glue. Talent's one thing, but you need glue on teams to hold it together. And when you start bringing in some pickaxes that are going to break it apart, we're gonna be in a lot of trouble.
Absolutely. We're coming to the end, guys, and just want to mention, if you're going to a tryout, you young guys and parents, please, we could give you some advice. If you're taking the tryouts, don't say anything. Just sit there and watch, relax, stay out of the way, because it's already a very nervous situation. Trust me, we've all been through it. Man, talk about nerves. And kids, my advice to you would be this, basically, is you've done what you've done up to now. If you worked really hard at it, the skills will come out. If you haven't, that's going to come out also. All you can do is your best. You can't change anything. You're not going to throw any harder. You're not going to swing any faster because you haven't trained for it. So just go out and do your best. You're going to fail. There's no doubt about it. There's going to be failure at tryouts. There's nobody that never not fails at something. So just accept it, learn from it, and go on from there. And it's just a great experience. Hey, Coach Nelson, Harper College. All right, you just got the head coaching job there. Here's how I love to end this with a couple questions here. You've got the good and the bad. Here's my good and bad for you, and then you tell me where you stand. The good is, or the bad is, that you just got the head coaching job, but you can't play any games yet. You actually can't do anything. But the good is, it's a great time for a lot of young players to look at the junior college level. First of all, they should be already, because not everybody can play Division I, and there's junior colleges just as good as Division I schools. I mean, as there is Division III or II and all that. So the good part is this is a great time for recruiting. What's your take on all this during this time as the new head coach at Harper College?
Yeah, well, I mean, part of the reason I do what I do, or a big part of it, is to find ways to help kids pay for school, right? I mean, it's a whole different ballgame now. The cost of college just continues to increase. People are obviously some people are in some pretty difficult spots right now, so I didn't have a ton of money as a kid growing up. So it's always been at the forefront of my thought process. And because of that, I've been a big proponent of junior colleges for a long time. I mean, we sent countless guys to Oakton and to Heartland and to Parkland and a lot of the different places, because it helped them prepare for bigger and better things, and it was a lot more affordable than going to a big school and paying a lot of money. So you're right. It is an ideal time for these kids. I've intentionally left us some roster flexibility going into this fall and into next year, because I'm pretty certain that there's a number of those guys out there that they're sitting down at the kitchen table with their parents right now and debating whether or not they're going to go back to school. Right? Am I going to go sit in a dorm room and do e-learning and pay $35,000 a year? So I think we'll see an influx of guys, both this fall and then again at Christmas break, that are looking for other things. And I feel like we can provide a pretty neat opportunity for them. So I would encourage it. And I know that there's people all over the country that are listening. So this isn't just applicable to Harper, not just a sales pitch for what we're doing, but
Around the world.
And around the world. And that's another thing we got to talk about, because I would love to start bringing in some more international players into our program, because I think it's a great experience for them, and it's great for guys in our program to experience players from different countries and different cultures and stuff like that. But take a look at the junior college route and see what schools are near you. Put it on paper, see what the different costs look like, see what the benefits of it are. I mean, one real easy one is you're playing against guys that are 19 and maybe 20 years old. When you go to a four-year program, forget division level, whether it's a D3, D1, NAIA, whatever, you're playing against 22, 23-year-old men, right? It's a different thing when you come in there as a 17, 18-year-old freshman and you're competing against them. So you become a small fish pretty quickly, so take a look at it. We're excited. We have, just over 30 players that are rostered going into this fall. Like you said, we can't do anything. Campus is going to be closed until second semester, so we're limited to Zoom calls and, doing stuff like that. But I trust the guys will continue to get their work in. We'll give them a lot of guidance on how to do that. So I'm excited about it. And like you said, I know there's going to be some guys coming back that we can bring on to supplement and add to that roster to make it even stronger.
And we know in the state of Illinois, we've got a lot of talent, boy, a lot of talent. You always look at the draft, Illinois is always in the top 5 in the draft. But there's a lot of great college players, great college programs too, very successful ones. And now you've got to join some of these programs, and you've got to take Harper to the next level. To obviously your goal is going to be very high, but understanding you're going to grow this. What's your goals? What's your goals coming up to make Harper a better program than it's been in the past? What are some of the things you think you need to change to make that happen?
Well, one of the things I've been really outspoken about, and this is because I'm from this area, from this community, continue to live here and raise my kids here, is that Harper has a fantastic program called the Harper Promise Program. And that applies to any District 211, 214, 220 kid. So essentially the whole Mid-Suburban League. And with that, if kids enroll their freshman year and they follow what are seemingly pretty minimal standards of academics and attendance, but then there's a community service aspect to it as well, then they go to Harper tuition free. Okay, tuition free. And I don't care, where it's at. I mean, to get school taken care of, to get tuition taken care of for nothing is huge.
Wow.
And, I really want to work with the mid-suburban league coaches to key in on those players, educate them on that, help them understand how it is, baseball or not. Harper is a great place for them to develop as people, for them to get their gen eds and their associate degree out of the way, and then they can move on to whatever school it is, save a substantial amount of money. I mean, Harper's a top 30 college program academically in the entire country. So that's pretty big status right there, and a nice place to learn. So I think that's a big part of it. And when I say that, I feel bad sometimes about the kids that are on our roster and they're scratching their head and like, hey, what about us? And it's not taking anything away from them, right? I think we have some great kids that are coming in, some great kids that we retained. And I'd love to continue to open my arms to all of them and recruit players. But, if we can't win in our own backyard and we can't get some top players and some top students and, some just top really good people in our place to begin with, then we're going to struggle, right? How can we expect to win on a national level if we can't even win in our own community? And I think that's the way that I look at it. And, there's some guys that we're both, pretty close with, and we know, like Paul Bello at Palatine. He's a Harper, alum. He went to Harper before going to UIC, and, having him speak volumes about the program, want to see it back. Dominic Savino, Glenbrook North, kind of the same thing. He went to Harper, great baseball mind. So just getting that pipeline of players, moving our direction and building the program, I think is going to be a great thing. And the wins are going to take care of themselves. And, the 3-game sweeps of Oakton, that's for Coach Frado if you're listening. Those will take care of themselves if we take care of people in the right way and take care of things in our own backyard.
Absolutely. And a shout out to Coach Frado. He was on the show not too long ago. Another great coach here in Illinois. All right, finally, let's finish it. We're going to put all the stuff on the show notes, folks. How do you get a hold of Nelson? But basically, if somebody internationally or somebody in the U.S. listens to this or in Illinois wants to get a hold of you, wants to tell you about a player, best way to do that, not only how to contact you, but the best way to, what you would need information-wise to kind of know about that player a little bit.
Yeah, so we have there's a player survey, like a recruiting survey on the Harper Baseball website. I'll put it in the show notes. I'll send it to you. But that's probably the best way because that has all the important information from the academics and everything else. And then between myself and Adam O'Malley, who is one of my assistants, Ryan Lidge, who is the other, we go through and watch video and do our homework, reach out to the kids. So that's the best way to go about doing it. Follow Twitter is a huge thing. Send me a message on there, real simple, at Nelson Gord. Can't hide behind that. So yeah, send the information there. But I'll say this: if players get video into a coach's hands, get video into our hands, that's a great first step. If we have video, we have contact information, and then grades would probably be right after that. That paints a pretty good picture, of what we want to pursue and, something to move forward with.
All right. Perfect. Great way to end it. Don't forget, listen what Coach just said, grades. Get those grades up because grades relate to how you play on the field. Go ahead, Nelson.
Hey, Pete, I do have one thing because they're on the Facebook Live I've been following the whole time, and Joey Mac and Cheese, Joey Glorioso is on, head coach at Trinity.
Joey,
Trinity.
Hey, by the way, Joey Glorioso, he's big time. If he can hear me, all of a sudden I'm seeing on CBS News, NBC. They're interviewing him. He's big time in Chicago.
Big time. And I still got to get down there for lunch sometime. We're gonna
wait. I'm waiting for the invitation.
We both should. I'm waiting for it to pop up on the screen right here.
What's Joey got? A question?
No, he's commenting. He said that I'm older than everybody thinks because I said Eddie Haskell, so they're poking fun at me. Just Joe being Joe. And then, but we did have one question here from Nick Russo, and I'm sorry I didn't get to it earlier, but he asked about NCSA. When a player signs up as a member, how many times does the company go watch the player? And that's not the model. That's not the way NCSA works. NCSA is all online. So, we do engage with athletes all the time. They get emails and phone calls, and they have a recruiting coach they work with. And really, like I just said, the video is going to be the important thing. Once the video is in our hands, we can make somewhat an evaluation, and then we pass it along to the colleges and help you communicate with them. And then it's ultimately on the colleges to go out and see the player. So I'm sorry, Nick, we didn't get to your question sooner. Just wanted to get to that.
And Nick, my fault. Nick's a great follower. He's on every show. My fault there, because I'm having some problems understanding Facebook, how it works. Again, I'm older than you guys, so I'm just catching up. It's interesting how it's working on not working on my iPad. Now I just noticed on my phone, when I go to Facebook, I've got, let's see, Joe Kalish also, getting a good kid and hard worker, and Spencer Novak, he mentions.
Yep.
One of your players.
He's great. Yep.
On that, hey, Nelson, on that, since he said great kid, and, go ahead and give the qualities of, we all know the skill aspect of it, but give the qualities of what you're looking for there at Harper, in the type of athletes that you're looking for there.
Well, and this sounds, again, pretty cliche, but I would say if you want a team that puts up runs, recruit hitters, if you want a team that's going to shut other teams out, be strong up the middle, have good pitching. If you want to win, recruit winners, right? Recruit winners. And I think that's a pretty subjective term, but when you see it. And when you talk to the high school coaches, when you talk to the travel coaches, like, hey, I understand, the top guys in a lot of cases, they're looking at some different programs. But give me the guy that's going to compete his tail off, that's going to, it's going to throw a strike, that's going to put the ball in play, that's going to, show up to lifting every day and be an energy giver. Give me the winners. And if we have enough winners in the program, I didn't say talent level, just winners, winning personalities, winning mindsets, and you supplement that with, talent and skill development, then that's what we want, because we can't lose if we have winners. Okay. I didn't say we're going to win that, but we can't lose. Like, we will have a successful season. We will look back on it and think great thoughts if we have good people, who are just winners by nature. And Spencer fits that mold. So, we're excited about that.
And, finish it off with here. Let's see. I've got Jesse Zaragoza, Charles Poe, Greg Bronze. Thanks for joining us, man. We appreciate you watching. Sorry, I'm slow to the table here and seeing you, but interesting. Here's I know Greg Bronze well, out of Saskatoon, Canada. Great program. They send a lot of players to college baseball. So to my friends out there on Facebook, and also that people are going to see it on Zoom, on YouTube at Peter Caliendo, also, and on the podcast, Baseball Outside the Box. I'm biased, obviously. Somebody says to me, should a player go to Coach Gord's program at Harper? I don't even hesitate. The answer is yes, absolutely, 100%. That young man will not only grow as a baseball player, but he will grow as a person. It will help him in his life in general just by being around Coach Gord. So I would definitely recommend it. Nelson, man, this has been fantastic. Unless you got anything else, which I know you got a lot. But if you got anything else, I just want to thank you, man, for being on the show. This was awesome.
Thank you so much. And thank you for, just being a mentor and a good friend, because I owe a lot of my love for the game to what you put out there every day. So I appreciate it. I appreciate being on, and look forward to continuing to follow you.
Hey, I lied. We're not done yet. I just remembered something. That's what happens on the show all the time.
Okay.
Older, you tend to forget things, and I actually wrote it down. But I do want you to tell one last story before you go, because I remember it, and I appreciate the compliments there. I remember it because you were in pro ball, I believe, and I know you played independent ball also. But in pro ball, you were asked to play a position that you never played in your life. And you made that decision right away, and that allowed you to continue to play I believe in pro ball. You want to tell that story? I think it's a
Yeah,
good
it
one.
was actually with the Flyers. It was when, the first week I signed. So 2004, first weekend was out in Lincoln. So I joined the team on a Sunday, rode the bus down there, 3-game series, didn't play at all. I caught bullpens, took BP, did the whole thing. No game action. Come back, we're playing against Sioux Falls or Sioux City. I think Sioux City, pretty sure it's Sioux City. And we're back at home in Schaumburg, and TJ Staten, longtime professional player, was a double AAA DH left fielder. But he came in after the long bus trip back from Lincoln. He's like, my back's hurting. I can't play today. I can't even DH. So Andy McCauley was like, hey, Gordo, he's like, play the outfield? Like, damn right I can. And grabbed somebody's outfielder's glove, went out and took fly balls out there during BP. And if you look at Baseball Reference and all that, I actually ended up playing more outfield than anything in my 4 years of independent ball. So kind of funny how that worked out.
Do you have any experience at it?
No, last time I played outfield was probably 13, 14 years old. Yeah, I didn't play ever in high school. In college, played all 4 infield spots and caught a little bit. But no, had not taken a fly ball. I did do a couple innings in college summer league when I played all 9 positions, but hadn't seriously started a game or taken any outfield work, in pretty much since Little League.
And kids, the moral of the story is, think about it. You take a chance, tell the coach, I can do it, do your best at it. You never know where it'll take you to the next level. And the other thing is, I know I was taught this very young in Mickey Owen Baseball School. Just work on your fundamentals, your skills, throw, catch, field, hit, run, work on fly balls, because you got to catch fly balls in the infield. If you're a catcher, whether you're an infielder, you could do all those things. I relate this to the Japanese all the time. They're very well fundamentally strong. You can play them anywhere. So again, gives you that opportunity to play another skill, or possibly you were going to get cut. And yet, because you took that chance and played another position, now you're continuing to do what you love. So again, special thanks to my good friend, Nelson Gord. Thanks, Nelson. Appreciate it, man. The show is ending.
All right. Thanks, Pete. Have a good one. Man.
That's Nelson Gord, head college coach at Harper Junior College here in Illinois. Check it out. We'll put everything on the show notes. Special thanks to Brian Kroc, our producer with the Lineup Media Group. Check that out. Check the audio out at baseballoutsidethebox.com. Go to YouTube, subscribe. Peter Caliendo, 90-plus shows on YouTube. If you like the visual aspect of seeing your guest, if you like the audio or it's easier, then go to baseballoutsidethebox.com. And don't forget, subscribe to them. That's all we ask. We really appreciate that. Gets the show out. Again, thank you to everybody in the U.S. and around the world for joining the show. If you're interested and you have any questions, comments, or you want to ask about the trip that we're taking in December to Cuba, 15, 14, 13-year-old players, email me at caliendo19@gmail.com. Again, we're heading to Havana, Cuba to practice and also to train against some of the best players in the world. We're going to have great competition there too. Check it out. Again, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you on the next show. Bye-bye.